Billing itself as a hardcore action RPG, developer Deck 13 assimilates the difficult and labyrinthine styles of games like Bloodborne and Dark Souls and adds its own unique flavor to deliver a challenging and fun, though a bit disjointed, sci-fi survival adventure. You'll spend the lengthy campaign in an exosuit exploring a series of locations that check all the trademark boxes of a near-future industrial zone. The vibrant color palette provides an interesting contrast to the horror of the events taking place within, and despite a few late-game jitters, both the areas and action look great on PC and really good on PS4 or Xbox One. The main story is a fairly predictable excuse for clomping from spot to spot. It wades through several classic science fiction tropes, and while I was able to follow along in broad strokes, specific details are hazy. It's not that I wasn't paying attention, but a lot of it was presented as background noise. A character may have been giving a beautiful speech about the hubris of mankind, but I was too busy trying to avoid being clubbed to death by cyborgs to let it fully sink in. It also doesn't help that what truly interesting moments there are take upwards of 10 to 15 hours of exploration and grinding to reach. However, the story does become significantly more intriguing in the second half, and there's some great environmental storytelling to be found throughout. The Surge follows the now familiar formula of letting you collect as much XP and scrap as you dare while battling various robot, zombified coworkers and bosses before you cash it in, but if you get killed, you'll lose whatever resources you had on you. Returning from Deck 13's last game, Lords of the Fallen, are a multiplier mechanic that increases your earnings with each kill and resets if you deposit your scrap or die, and a post-resurrection countdown timer that eliminates your earnings if you take too long to retrieve them. They're interesting inclusions that dramatically raise the stakes, heightening both the exhilaration of success and the maddening frustration of failing to recover large amounts of XP. Where the Surge really excels, however, is in its combat encounters. The fights might not be the most brutally challenging I've ever played, but cutting through a group of enemies is still satisfying. Opponents aren't particularly smart, and the lack of any self-preservation instinct feels especially out of place when tackling late-game human foes, but they all still require a deft hand to counter, dodge, and generally avoid being murdered by. It's a solid balance of strategic offense and defense, and borderline arcadey hack-and-slash action that I found enjoyable right up through the end. The most interesting part is the dismemberment system, which not only finishes off opponents in grisly cinematic fashion, but also lets you harvest new gear for your exosuit. Choosing which body parts to attack to preserve items you want adds a cool tactical dimension to fights. And the novelty of each animation wore off after a while, but seeing the queue for an execution pop up was consistently satisfying and, on occasion, provided a few much-needed seconds of respite during a stressful fight against multiple opponents. Expect to spend a fair amount of time playing Dress Up. I really enjoyed the wide variety of gear and how each set had at least one specific purpose. Coupled with the multitude of bonus-granting implants I could install as I leveled up, I found myself constantly experimenting with different combinations to find ones that best suited my playstyle. I found the weapon design similarly interesting, though I didn't see much use in switching between them. I found one that worked for me early on and upgraded it often, so it was always the most powerful thing in my inventory. Aside from a few finds at the very end, everything else was obsolete before I even picked it up, and it was a shame because while I definitely experiment with different weapons in New Game Plus, in my first playthrough it felt like using anything else was giving myself an unnecessary handicap. The Surge makes good use of its detailed sci-fi setting and provides an engaging experience throughout the 30 to 40 hour campaign, mostly thanks to its widely customizable inventory and wickedly fun combat system. It may struggle to tell a strong story amid the chaos of battle, and its weapon progression plateaued early on, but it offers some interesting ideas and delivers a solid new take on a familiar genre. For more on The Surge, check out the first 15 minutes, the most important things to do first, and our PS4 versus PS4 Pro graphics comparison.